Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 882A, and today's date is February 1st, 2016, and the title of the episode is The Economic Facts Are Pointing to an Economic Collapse. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we see the plunge protection team, the high-frequency traders. They couldn't do exactly what they did on Friday, where they brought the market up to almost 400 points. We saw the official from the Fed, Fisher, come out, make some announcement, and all of a sudden the market skyrocketed and closed at negative 17 or so. And we see that this market is completely manipulated. They're doing whatever they possibly can to keep the market up. And the question is, why are they continually doing this? Well, they need to do this to convince everyone that we're in a recovery. Actually, I don't even think they call it a recovery. I think they think that the economy is just doing well and everything is fine. But we're looking at facts here. And we're looking at what's really going on in this economy. And every single piece of evidence, facts that we're looking at with the economy is pointing to one scenario and one scenario only. Yes, they can manipulate. Yes, they can do whatever they have to do. But when we look at this, we see that Europe, the Eurozone, it's starting to slide. Actually, it has been sliding. They pumped it up with 0% interest rates, negative interest rates, creation of free money. And right now we're seeing Eurozone manufacturing. Their growth has slowed. Market has come out with the Purchasing Managers Index for January, and it came in around 52.3. They thought it was going to be around 53.2. So it missed its estimates, and market is out there saying that expansion in output, new orders, new export business, all eased during the month, which means it's starting to slow. And we can see that in the United States, manufacturing is continually declining and not doing well. And even the people who are losing their jobs, who can't find work because of these mass layoffs, and there are thousands upon thousands of people being laid off, retail stores are closing, and we are starting to see that people, they're just not spending their funds. Why? Because they're nervous, they're afraid, they're scared. And normally what people do is they try to sock away as much as they possibly can. Now, a lot of these people are working 1, 2, 3, 4 part-time jobs. And we see in December, spending was a complete disaster. It didn't go anywhere. People who are continually keeping funds in the bank has gone up. And we can see this is why the holiday season was a complete disaster, because people are very nervous about what the economy is really doing. And we have to realize, where are all these personal income gains coming from? Well, 42% of December's personal income gains came from government social benefits, Social Security, which includes Medicare. That's where all this came from. But we can see that this cannot keep the economy alive. Because right now what we're seeing is that hundreds of stores are closing down in the United States. Shoppers are also reporting that shelves in many retail locations are kind of empty. They don't have the same stock on the shelves that they used to have. And we can see that from what's going on here is that things are starting to fall apart. I mean, Walmart, they're closing 269 stores, including 154 in the United States. Kmart is closing down 24 stores. JCPenney, 47 more stores, because they already closed 40 in 2015. Macy's, we know, is closing their stores, laying off about 2,500 people. The Gap is closing 175 stores. Aéropostale, 84 stores. Finish Line, 150 stores. Sears, about 400 stores. And this entire retail scenario tells us that people do not have the jobs. They're not secure in whatever job they have, or if they don't have a job, they're saying, okay, guess what? Spending is off. We are not going out there. And this is why we see the demand for products is continually declining. And if no one is demanding these products and no one going out and purchasing them, guess what? Manufacturers, they don't have to produce. They don't have to produce. They don't need the raw material. It all feeds into each other. I mean, we're looking at the revenue and earnings of corporations. 40% of the companies in the S&P 500 index, they've reported their earnings for the fourth quarter, including 8 of the top 10 by weight. The S&P 500 companies, they account for about 80% of the market capitalization. And it gives us a good example of how corporate America is doing. And what we're seeing right now is that it's not doing too well. And we see we're getting a blended type of report here, because some companies reported in, some didn't, and they blend the information together. And this is coming from FactSet. And we're seeing that revenue declines are stretching across 4 quarters in a row. When was the last time we saw this? This was back in 2008 and 2009. 4 of the 10 sectors are in red. Energy, material sector, they got hit the hardest. Industrials, they're also weak. Technology, also weak. We're seeing things completely fall apart. Microsoft and IBM, their revenues dropped by 10% and 8.5%. So basically, we are starting to see things fall apart. Energy is down by negative 35.9%. Materials, negative 14.9%. Industrials, negative 7.1%. Technology, negative 4.5%. S&P 500, negative 3.5%. Don't worry, healthcare is up. So what we're seeing right now is it's starting to spread. And what do companies do? Well, they have to cut costs, of course. And what does that really mean? That means they're going to lay off more people. And if the tech industry is not doing well, guess what happens? They lay off people. Remember, a lot of the companies that have their tech employees, this is an expense. And those people normally go first. And we're going to see this because we're starting to see that a lot of corporations are saying, okay, we're not bringing in the revenue, we're not bringing in the earnings. Let's cut the staff. Let's buy back our stock. Let's try to keep everything looking good. And things are really starting to fall apart. Manufacturing here in the country, guess what? It disappointed again. They were expecting a 52.6. It came in at 52.4. This is the 5th month in a row that the ISM manufacturing is completely falling apart. And we're looking at manufacturing right now, and we see new export orders crashed, and everything is declining right now. I mean, these are hard facts. This is not pie in the sky. This is not like, oh, the economy is just going to spring back out of nowhere. The Baltic Dry Index right now, it dropped another 3 points. We're down to 314. So we see that the Atalanta FED is out there looking at the whole entire situation. And they're saying, okay, the fourth quarter was a complete disaster. We brought in about 0.7% of GDP. And they might even have to reduce this number because today we had a very big construction spending miss. So we might see the 0.7% go down to maybe 0.3%. The Atalanta Fed is already predicting that the first quarter of this year is going to be about 1.2%. Now, we have to think back because the central banks, governments, they were all out there telling us that the fourth quarter of 2015 was going to be 3% GDP. Remember in the beginning of, or the end of 2014 going into 2015, they said, oh, this economy is going to be doing fantastic in 2015. It's going to be 3% GDP. Guess what? They're wrong again. And now they're saying 2016 is going to be incredible. 3% GDP, 2.5% GDP. It's everything is fine. And 2017, it's even better. But guess what? It's all wrong. They're keeping the illusion alive, trying to convince everyone by throwing out all these predictions, and they're never right. And they know that they need to keep the illusion alive. They know that this entire system is falling apart. This is why the central bankers are calling for a cashless society. On the X22Report.com and the Sentinel Alerts, if you go to Sentinel Alerts today, I put up an article about Bloomberg with an op-ed which is calling for no more cash, the end of cash. And they're doing this on purpose because they're trying to push this out there now, convincing everyone we no longer need cash. And we see a lot of countries now looking at this saying, okay, maybe we don't need cash. And the only reason they're doing this is because they want to control where the cash is. They saw what happened in Greece, where people went to the bank and said, okay, there's a problem here. We're afraid of bail-ins. We need to take our cash out, put it under our mattresses. That's exactly what they did. They don't want the same thing happening here in the US, in Canada, or anywhere else, because they have the bail-in documents. If everyone comes and takes the cash out of the banks, they have nothing to bail in. So what happens to cash when governments go electronic? Can you use it for anything? What do you do with it? Does it become worthless? Well, in Europe, we see that there are certain countries that are going cashless. And basically, cash will be demonetized. It will become worthless. They'll give you a window in time to redeem the cash for electronic money, basically deposit into the bank and say, okay, can't take anything out. And we need to keep in mind that this will produce a windfall for the government. And they're most likely going to tax anyone who cannot prove why they have the cash. Now, this is typical when a society is falling apart. We saw this back in Rome. The Roman emperor saw the treasury being depleted with his cost on the wars, and he had a brilliant idea, and he was going to demonetize older coinage. And what they were doing was declaring the old coinage to be invalid for paying taxes. As a result, you had to turn in all the old worn-out coinage, and then they reissued the coins with 10% less silver content. So he took in the old, melted it down, and increased the money supply by 10%. The same thing's happening now. They're going to take in the cash, put it in the bank, and they're going to save themselves by doing bail-ins. They're going to take everyone's wealth, and they'll know exactly where it is. This is where we are moving at this point, because the entire system is starting to fall apart. And we know they realize that this entire economy is falling apart because the Senate is getting ready to vote on the TPP. And we know that Obama, once they approve it, he's going to basically sign off on it in February, which means that the corporations now have control of what's going on, which means they will bring in foreign workers into this country and they will pay them the foreign worker salary. How are the United States people going to compete with this? They will not be able to. Which means the people here in the United States is going to have to lower their salary requirements to get work. Which means the United States is going to be a third world country. And the governments will no longer have control. The control will then go to the corporations. This in no way helps the people of any of these countries. I know they're saying it's going to create jobs. I know they're saying it's going to work out. But we see from the past, this has not happened whatsoever. Right now, Iran says SWIFT opens to 9 more banks on Monday. Everything went online. The sanctions are being lifted. And Iran has access to the system. Now remember, all of this is being done, and the P5+1 talks were done not for nuclear purposes. This was done because the United States needed a way to continually push the debt and hopefully place the dollar on the oil. So every time Iran makes a sale, they're going to use the dollar. How long will this last? Most likely not that long. Most likely Iran, Russia, China will say, well, we don't need to use the dollar. Let's bypass this. And this will be a huge problem. And this is when we'll be going to war. Because they will not let this happen. Now, what's very interesting is that we always hear these arguments about the debt ceiling, the debt limit crisis, how the country can't survive unless we raise the ceiling and borrow more money. Well, it seems that we were lied to once again because new documents that were leaked show that the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, the officials there, they conducted real-time exercises during the 2011 and 2013 debt limit crisis. And it demonstrated at that point that the federal government was able to function during a temporary shutdown. Even though Treasury Secretary Jack Lew said, yeah, this is unworkable, we can't do it. But according to new reports from the House Financial Services Committee, obtained by the Daily Caller News Foundation, it charges that Lew and other Obama administration officials deliberately misled Congress and the public during the federal budget and debt limit showdowns. The report also states that Obama, he crafted contingency plans to pay for, like Social Security, veteran benefits, the principal and interest on the national debt, if the government was shut down. The committee concludes that over the last 2 years, the Treasury Department has obstructed congressional efforts to get to the bottom of all of these things. And remember, the Constitution stipulates that only Congress can determine how much money the federal government can borrow. The president cannot unilaterally spend beyond congressional debt ceiling limits. So the internal documents show that the Obama administration took the nation's credit worthiness and economy hostage to get what he wanted. And it also reveals that the Treasury Department did not publicly divulge its plans to prioritize payments for the express purpose of creating market uncertainty in an effort to pressure Congress to pass the debt ceiling and raise it. So once again, there's no transparency. Once again, they're lying about what's really going on in the economy. Once again, they're hiding things from everyone to get their way. And we're starting to see this quite a bit in this government. It's been going on for a very long time, and as time goes on, it's getting worse and worse, and we're seeing lie after lie after lie. And that's all we see. The government continuously lies to the people. And when you look through the Constitution, it doesn't say anything about lying to the people. It says that the government is supposed to be working for the people, making it better for the people. But as we know, the government no longer works for the people. The government, depending on which part you're talking about, works for the central bank, work for special interest groups, corporations, foreign entities, governments of other nations who are being bribed, and the people are left out in the cold. And all they want to do is tax us, control us, and we can see at this point that it's time that we take things back into our own hands and we say, okay, enough is enough. We need a government, we need a body there that only works for the people. Because as this economy collapses, as the system falls apart, we need to all stand up together and say, enough's enough. We need to make a huge change. And if that change, if that change is removing the entire government and replacing it with new people and rewriting some of the rules where this cannot be a lifelong career. Actually, politicians, it should never be a lifelong career. You should have a career, and this should be a position that you take temporarily, and then you go back to your career. That's how it was originally done. But, of course, politicians, they wanted health benefits. They wanted retirement. They wanted everything for themselves. And today, a lot of these people in government, they believe they're like royalty. They're on a different plane of existence. And we are just the serfs. We are just below them. Because think about all the perks they have in government. I mean, should government really be this way, where they have their own gym, their own golf course, restaurants, being shuttled around in limousines and private planes? No. We're paying for all of this. And it's time to say, we're done with this. We're done catering to this type of government. When this system comes crumbling down, it will be our time to make a change. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.